Hello and welcome to Comic Sans, the podcast about comics for those who are sans knowledge. I'm Yen, I'm the comic half of this podcast.
And I am Nat, I am the sans half of this podcast, and we are at the end.
It's true, it is the season finale of season 3.
In the blink of an eye, 3 seasons have come and gone. It feels like just yesterday that I was learning what a page turn was, what a floppy was, what a trade was, what an omnibus was. Look at me.
Flexing.
Flexing.
It feels like an eternity ago to me. Like if I think of us when we were reading Saga, I'm like, wow, what a bunch of schlubs. And now I look at us and I think, wow, what a bunch of schlubs. Nat, tell me something you've been enjoying lately.
This past weekend, I went to the cinemas to watch a movie.
Did you go see it again?
And once again, I watched for the second time.
Don't do it again. Okay, please, don't. What you may not pick up because our mics are too good. It's the way that reverberated in the space. That sound hit me 3-4 times.
I watched Wicked again, folks. It was so good. I love Ariana. I love Cynthia Erivo.
You started in a good way. I'm back on your side.
I mean, genuinely, on second watching, I feel like I appreciated Ariana's performance more.
Yeah, she's so camp.
She's good.
She's having so much fun.
Yeah.
Ask me now, Nat. Come on.
Yen, I was getting there. I was milking the moment, and I was going to ask you, Yen.
Okay.
What have you been enjoying recently?
So I actually went to the National Library the other day.
Shout out libraries.
And I went to the comic section. I was like, oh, this looks interesting. So I picked up Allison by Lizzie Stewart. And it's basically just the life of this British woman who becomes a painter. I would say page-wise, the way the page is structured, it's a graphic novel. Mm-hmm. The way the page is structured is much like a kid's book with one big image and then a lot of text underneath.
Oh.
So the text isn't integrated into it.
That's
almost
an interesting
at all.
question, are kids' books graphic novels?
Honestly, these kinds of definitions, it's like,
who cares?
Yeah, who cares?
Yeah,
right?
I know.
Yeah. And it was very much for adults. It wasn't at all for kids.
Right.
But it was a very beautiful story and I highly recommend it to people, especially if you're into sort of Bildungsroman. It's also got a lot of like nuanced sexual politics of the character and how she becomes an artist. And the mentor figure she has.
I would love to see a graphic novel with like pop-up things, One of those books with like the pages
yeah,
pop
that
up.
would be cool.
That would be cool.
Huh? Oh, actually, you know what? Can I read a section of Allison that I just was very moved by?
Sure.
So it's her sitting with her first husband who she marries at 17 and you look at that image. Do you see what I mean?
And if you're watching a video, we'll put this on screen.
Yeah. The thing about our marriage was that there was no one thing about it. No one thing that told me why I was there, nor why I would ever leave. 2 years in, I realized that my life was no better or worse because of it. I think every girl wants better or worse. Ideally better, I suppose. But sometimes worse can be delicious, so enlivening that we'll take it simply to have something to do.
Ooh.
Isn't that incredible?
That's so profound.
I was like, wow, that's such a beautiful piece of writing that's buried in there. Okay, well, that's enough about a different graphic novel. Let's talk about what we're reading today, Nat.
The season closer.
So last episode, I already said if you liked This One Summer, I think you're going to like what we're reading today.
Which I did like. I did enjoy This One Summer. And then you said if you enjoyed Jillian and Mariko Tamaki, you would enjoy today. So am I right to assume that today's comic is also by them?
You are correct, Nat.
Woo!
We're back to the cousin powerhouses of Jillian and Mariko Tamaki. I'm not going to regale you with their accolades again. If listeners, if you're curious about the Tamakis, you can go back and listen to This One Summer where I fully brief Nat on the many things they've accomplished. We're just going to start with what we're reading today, which is Roaming.
Roaming.
It's a beautiful book.
Go ahead.
Published by Drawn and Quarterly.
Tell me.
In September 2023. Written for several years. And I think an important thing to note that isn't really like what the book is about, but I think it's just interesting to note is that it's a book about travel that was written during a lockdown. Yeah, so it came out 2023 and they started it in 2020.
Perhaps out of a place of yearning.
But that doesn't really feature into the comic because the comic is set squarely in 2009.
Oh, okay.
It's about a trip to New York for 3 Canadian college students, 2 of whom are already friends, and the third one about to become a friend. And like This One Summer, it's about friendship, it's about growing up, and it's about all the hurt and love that comes in between. This is not a YA novel. This is squarely for adults.
Okay.
And it's also a furthering of their existing creative process. So I don't know if you remember this, but from Skim and This One Summer, Mariko Tamaki wrote a full script that looked something like a theater script, like a play, and then Jillian used that.
I vaguely recall this, yes.
For Roaming, this is Mariko Tamaki, quote, "We just passed the story back and forth until I guess we both decided it was done." End quote. So this was something that they plotted together. they were really interweaving with each other.
Kind of like an exquisite corpse kind of situation. Well, I guess they would have seen what's before.
They would have seen what's before. I think they were editing each other. They were thinking a lot about their trips to New York at that age and the things they wanted to do. Like this one summer, you should be prepared for some deceptively simple pages that hide layers of meaning and intricacy and emotion beneath it. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous book that I actually read for the first time a week before I moved away from Chicago.
Ooh.
With a similar story as Allison, where I was feeling a little lost. I was like, oh man, I'm really going to miss this city. Let me go to one of my favorite things, the library. So I went to the library, went to the graphic novel shelf. I actually wanted to read this for a while, pulled down Roaming, and sat there and just read the whole thing in one sitting.
Wow.
And I closed the book and I was like, we got to read this on Comic Sans. So I wish we could read the whole thing because it's really beautiful and I think it's really terrific. But we're going to be jumping around a lot. Essentially what we're going to be reading is the opening and then 2 different museum trips.
Okay.
The page numbers is 1 to 30, 86 to 125, 194 to 231. But basically it's them arriving in New York, their trip to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and then the Natural History Museum. And in between that, there's a little bit of chemistry that buds, a little bit of conflict, a little bit of somebody feels a little left out. You're going to get a sense of that. You're not going to really need me to say more than that. So now, Nat, I give to you Roaming for our season finale of Comic Sans.
Ooh, I already feel like this is going to be a very gentle episode.
Yeah.
The energy in the room today is sort of like every time we read a Tamaki work,
Every time.
the one time,
Yeah.
and then this time,
This one summer, we read a Tamaki work.
it just brings a sort of gentle spirit
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
the space. I don't know why.
We'll get into it later, but I think there's just like a spirit of generosity and tenderness. So yeah, Nat, a book made by 2 friends, about friends, read on a show made by friends. Take it away. So you're back from 2009 New York City, Nat. How does it feel?
New York. I love New York. You know, we were just there in February. We recorded most of season 2 in New York. So it's nice. It's nice to kind of return to that through this comic. I mean, obviously, I've been to the Met. I've been to the Natural History Museum.
I mean, I would say that was a little bit of an intentional choice of why this is the season finale also.
Yeah.
All of season 2 was recorded in New York when we were doing things very much like what these 3 characters were doing.
Yeah.
But you know, give me your 5 words first before we get into it.
Okay, I'm going to start with low-hanging fruit. I think it's unavoidable. I'm going to start with friendship.
Okay.
And all the layers of that, right?
Okay.
You know, if I could expound on that a little, talking about childhood friendships, but also like new friendships and how those things interplay and get complicated.
Okay.
Second word I'll use is burgeoning.
Okay.
Things that are kind of bubbling to the surface there, whether that is a little bit of a romance or a little bit of tension. I think burgeoning is the second word I'd use. Third word I'd use is hyphenated.
As is your want. Yep.
Liberal art school kids.
Okay.
You know?
You get to say that because you were also
I was
a
a liberal art school kid.
To be clear for everyone listening.
And I don't mean that in a derogatory way.
Yeah.
Even though I said it in a kind of derogatory manner.
The tone, not good.
Liberal art school kids. You know, it's a feature of the story and how they think about the world and also the differences in how they think about the world.
Number 4.
I would like to say pacing.
Okay.
Pace.
Yeah.
I say this with some knowledge of New York, and I think New York is known for being a very fast-paced city, and I think that's one element of it. Museums also bring their own sense of pace.
Mm-hmm.
Then also there's these 3 characters who approach life with a different pace, and that also feeds into some of the tension and some of the things that are happening. Here's the kicker. Are you ready?
I'm ready for
Here's
your load-bearing word.
Because this is layered. You can like this one. So big, so small. That's a little reference to Dear Evan Hansen, which has no relevance to this comic other
Not
than
at all.
Broadway in New York, I guess, vaguely.
Sure.
But I think there's something, as I was reading this, I was just struck with, when you, especially in the Natural History Museum, it's just, you're overloaded with things, big things, blue whales, dinosaurs. And I think the Tamakis really capture that really well. And we'll get into it with some of these amazing spreads. And then, but then there's also simultaneously, and given equal gravity, I'd say, these small intimate moments.
Yes.
Right? And so it's just this juxtaposition of like
parallel levels of scale.
Yeah. And butterflies are made huge and dinosaurs are made small and
absolutely.
And it's just, it's nice.
Which is a continuation of a lot of stuff from this one summer, right?
Exactly.
Where the micro moments are given such weight and such
Arguably the
importance.
mundane moments.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So I'm going to quickly summarize what Nat read today. So the opening features Danny and Zoe reuniting in New York City. They're
Childhood friends
through high school.
Yeah.
Best friends, basically. But went off to different colleges. And Zoe's doing life sciences and Danny's doing
fine arts. Yeah.
And she's brought with her her new friend from school, Fiona.
Who is both her course mate. Also, I think they live in the same floor in their dorm.
Yeah. But they're not as familiar with each other. So that opening is just them going through the train station and meeting each other for the first time. And you already get the sense of how different these characters are.
Yeah.
So what Nat doesn't know is that they go drinking that night. They just sort of get to know each other a little better. And then the next day, they go to the Met.
Mm-hmm.
And they look at the art and they all have very different reactions to the art. Like Danny and Zoe are a little bit more excited by it. And Fiona's kind of got this, well, it's all she's above it all.
Yeah.
What Nat also doesn't know is that in between this, they go to the first Uniqlo in America.
Oh, wow. How did we not read that part?
I know. No, I really had to really keep it narrow today because I wanted to just really focus on these scenes that I love.
Yeah.
The friendship and the museums, because I think this book is also a little bit about tourism.
And I'll be honest, when you briefed me that the 2 chapters we're going to be reading were about museums, I was a little skeptical. I was like,
no, yeah.
How can you interestingly portray museums? I mean, I work in a museum in my day job, right?
True. So true.
I appreciate their value,
this
but
is
also
a very identity politics forward episode. Nat, as a person who works in a museum and liberal arts student. And then they go to the Natural History Museum. There's a bit of consternation. There's already some conflict that you didn't see.
Yeah.
Where actually Danny doesn't know already that Zoe and Fiona have hooked up.
Well, and also, and you didn't mention that at the end of the Met, there's a little bit of a romance, a little bit of fingers touching between Zoe and Fiona.
Yes. And so the reader already knows that. Danny doesn't know that. But by the time you get to the Natural History Museum, we get the sense that Danny's a little upset with what's going on. Not even that they're hooking up, but that they're just kind of excluding her from what was supposed to be a very fun experience for all of them. Danny is a lot like the really bubbly personality in This One Summer, who is just very excited and happy and really eager to do things.
And they get into the how it's been her childhood dream to visit New York, so she's really I'm here.
It's
for
a bit
this.
magical,
Yeah.
Fiona is very cynical,
jaded, aloof.
A little bit irritating, and I want to get into why she's particularly irritating. I'm trying to figure out, could I say this nicely? No, I can't.
I mean, she is a self-proclaimed bitch.
Yeah.
So I think we can use that word.
Yeah. Identity politics episode. And then Zoe is kind of in between. She's here for her friend.
Yeah.
She doesn't really have that many strong opinions, which is why I think. So they get into a bit of a fight near the end of the Natural History Museum where it seems like it's Zoe and Fiona versus Danny. Or that's at least how we know Danny's interpreting it. Let's go through it from the start. Let's talk about that opening. Nat.
Yeah.
Actually, no, let's start with the title page.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's go back one to this incredible title page of, would you say these pigeons are mating? I think so.
Mayhaps. They may be on the verge of it. But look at this, right? This is
New York.
This is an incredible title page because it's just New York. It's the debris of New York, right? Can of Coke, pizza slice, whatever, and 2 pigeons. But look at the body language of pigeons, which is crazy that pigeons have body language, that Jillian Tamaki is able to give the pigeons body language. But you see, one's already a little annoyed with the other.
Yeah.
The themes of the book are already emerging of one wants to be close and the other one wants to be far.
One's dominating the other also. Yeah. Remind me again, sorry, because you know how my memory is.
Yes.
Between Mariko and Jillian, are there roles like artist, writer?
Mariko is the writer, Jillian is the illustrator.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's clear cut.
Yeah. And so usually we like to be more formal and use the person's surname. But for the purposes of this episode, we will be referring to them.
Tamaki is the...
Yeah, we will be referring them as Mariko and Jillian, and I hope nobody takes offense at that.
Okay, so beautiful title page. We turn the page, and this is a recurring page. These day 1, day 2, day 3 sort of chapter markers. There's
a similar minimalism to the color of roaming.
I was gonna say, but as This One Summer.
As This One Summer, whereas This One Summer is pretty much entirely monotone, right?
We get a bit more color.
Jillian's like, I'll add one more. I'll have a palette of 2.
I think there's just something so calming about the color palette. It just puts you in this sense of ease And I think especially when the story gets a little bit spicy, a little bit dicey, but you kind of still feel like things are under control a little.
I mean, we're looking at the absolute opposite approach to coloring as Molly Mendoza in Skip.
I was listening
right,
to
where
that,
Skip is maximalist. It's almost every color you could imagine is there, but it's still very bright and vibrant.
Yeah.
This is very muted. It's a little restrained. It's specifically in the tone of it, not sharp, very rounded colors. You just feel a sense of ease.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting given where this thing is set, right? Set in New York, all kind of muted down with this color palette. And then also museums, right? Traditionally not known to be very colorless places, especially the Met, it's full of color. But then it's kind of all pared down with this color palette and it kind of works.
I think it's terrific. It really sucks you into it immediately.
Yeah.
You're drawn into it and you're understanding this is almost a memory, really. Right?
Yeah.
You're not reading this as an event that's happening now. It's not just that it's set in 2009. This is a memory of 2009.
Right. You're right. Oh yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
There's a tinge of nostalgia to everything.
Absolutely.
So we keep going and I think I love the way it starts.
The opening is so good.
It's just 2-page spread, blank, blue, purple, and then just speech bubbles. Yep. Don't you dare. No. Turn the page. Okay, listen. I'm gonna tell you something, but you have to keep it to yourself, Marlene. Okay? And it's not even anyone important.
It's none of the three characters.
It's just Zoe eavesdropping some other conversation that this woman is having.
In the airport.
Yeah. So good.
While she waits for Dee to arrive.
The first couple pages are just Zoe kind of just waiting around in the
ambling,
airport.
really.
Ambling, yeah, that's a great word.
Yeah.
Reading a book, people sit next to her. She's like, nope.
She leaves.
Looks at the escalator, and finally, Danny shows up, comes over the top of the escalator, beams when she sees Zoe, and then they hug, and this is great page. This hug.
Let's talk about page construction too. Let's talk about page construction / dialogue. We're looking at a fairly muted, pretty much the only person we've heard talk so much is this stranger who we never see again, who Dee leaves and goes sits elsewhere. Silence. A little bit of busyness, actually, like a very fairly realistic depiction of the airport, right? Lots of people going through. The diagonal lines of the escalator cut through the image. It's messy, it's busy, a big mixture of panels on the next page, and then fully clean.
Yeah.
Big 2-page spread.
We lose the background.
We lose the background.
details.
The busyness is gone. The world falls out behind them in the face of their friendship. Right? It's so sweet. And we instantly like, these are two our close friends.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Say no more.
Yeah. It's the small moments within the big moments, right?
Yeah.
Again. But then I think it's interesting to compare this to the moments between Fiona and Zoe later.
Yes.
In which we also lose the background, but the background, instead of being clean, is replaced by other details.
Yes.
Which I think we can get to later. But I think there's this interesting juxtaposition there, right? This particular page with the clean background, the kind of just wiped, is a kind of perhaps allusion to the sort of innocent kind of childhood friendship that is their relationship.
Yeah.
It's not as interesting and textured as Fiona and Zoe later on.
Yeah. I think it's also, I think one of the marvelous things about this book is that Jillian Tamaki from the get-go is setting up a vocabulary for you. Right? Like this is a vocabulary. She's setting this up as like, oh, these are the ways I'm going to use this. And then by the time you get to the Natural History Museum, she's like, you thought you knew what I'm up to? I'm doing something else.
Yeah.
I'm going to break every rule that I've built for you so far.
Yeah.
Which is just fantastic. It's just such fantastic storytelling.
We also haven't talked about a little bit of the looks of the characters.
Yeah, the character design is beautiful. You never get confused on who you're looking at.
So Zoe is very distinct, right? She has a kind of a buzz cut hair that she reveals she recently shaved it and it's kind of growing back a little. She's wearing like Doc Mart boots, all black.
Black hoodie, black pants.
And Danny kind of looks a little more
rambunctious,
lived in a suburban neighborhood and then just moved to college and still kind of wearing the kind of very characterless clothes, I'd say.
I would say.
You know what I say?
What?
Uniqlo. She's dressed like he's wearing Uniqlo.
No, but I mean, that's also like a little bit of frivolity to it.
Sure.
That's the opposite of Zoe's now kind of dourness, right? Like, look at the backpack, polka dotted.
Yeah.
Lots of apparel attached.
That's a very specific, that brand, the Scandinavian.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
Fjallraven.
Yeah, that's that bag,
We're not Scandinavian. You can take us down for that one.
With a puffy ball keychain attached to it.
Yeah.
It speaks for itself.
She's got the tote with the design, you know. She's lighthearted. And then we come to Fiona, who's
shows up in like her fur coat.
Yeah. Fiona is style forward for sure.
She's got kind of frizzy, what looks like blonde hair. You know, she's a little bigger personality.
She's got earrings. She's dressed up. Like every part of her is an opportunity to express herself.
When she speaks, she's immediately a little snarky.
Yeah.
Right? You can already tell just from the early conversations. Danny comments on Zoe's hair, and then the first thing we hear from Fiona is, I've never laid eyes on you before in my life, but I also think it looks good. Okay, that's a nice comment.
Yeah.
Right? But
I mean, she's already flirting, is what Nat's implying. So they get on the train and they're just jibber jabbering, getting to know each other.
There's not much to it. I mean, there's just little hints, right? Like Zoe's reading a book. Fiona asks her things about like why you're reading, is it homework? I mean, it's really just a little bit of exposition, finding out more about the characters, but we get a little sense of like,
I didn't want to skip this anyway, but the major reason we couldn't skip it is because it just introduces you to the characters so fluidly.
Yeah.
The body language and the way they look at each other and the way they stand in the space instantly tells you so much about them, right?
But what I think this does really well, and now that we kind of know a little bit more about the future arc, is you get a little bit of tension between Zoe and Fiona, and you're like, oh, are they gonna work out? And then kind of Danny is playing this mediator role. When they're talking about the book, Fiona says, you don't look like a nerd, but that's pretty fucking nerdy. Right? Again, you just met this person. Relax.
Yeah.
Okay? You know, and then like Danny is kind of playing the mediator, like, oh, Zoe's in life sciences, you know, a real degree. So again, lifting up her friend a bit, as she should be, I guess, because she's the connection point between these two friends. She's trying to like be the mediator. And you kind of, and because you alluded to this idea of attention and someone being left out, I was kind of expecting it to go a different direction.
No, yeah.
But then as we find out, Danny starts to be the one that gets ostracized.
And already the blocking, I use the word blocking because in prior interviews, especially for this one summer, the Tamakis talk about their work as if it's a theater production. The blocking of those pages already gives you an indication of what's going on. So Nat's talking about the dialogue, but if you look at how they're placed in the scenes, right? Fiona and Zoe are in this very entrenched conversation and Danny's flitting about. She's always like at the outside of that, taking photos, looking at the map, grinning over her shoulder, right? So she's so excited to be in New York. You're already getting the sense of her exuberance to be in this city and also foreshadowing of what's going to come, of the divisions that are about to be laid out. So now we're going to go jump forward to the Met.
Day 2 is a 2-page spread of a clock of some sort. And it's 9:30 in the morning is what we're told. They're in their hostel. I mean, for me, I get a sense already that, you know, again, this idea of a little bit of tension because Zoe and Danny have been waiting for Fiona for 45 minutes and finally she shows up. Right?
That's why day 2 starts with the clock.
Yeah.
To tell you, hey, time matters.
And she shows up and says, you guys ready? Oh, I want to punch her.
We've all traveled with someone / been that person.
And then Danny's like, are we ready? We've been down here for 45 minutes. But Zoe looks chill. Zoe in general presents a very chill nature. And very, you know.
And not an above
Danny's
it.
a little high strung.
Yeah, Danny's a little high strung. Zoe's never like chill in a, oh, I'm above this. But in a, what comes will come. And I think that's why, to speak of why Fiona perhaps is a little bit more difficult, is that her character is the most sure of who she is. And she may be wrong about that. And I think that just speaks to the age of these characters. I mean, you remember yourself at that age, what you think you are at that age. You think you're done. I remember so clearly being in college, being like, oh, okay, I'm cooked. Like, not as in I've cooked slang-wise, but no, I'm finished baking. Right?
That's what people say.
Yeah. The yeast is settled. You're
risen.
I have risen. But I was so wrong about that. And the most annoying thing was that I thought I was right.
Yeah.
And that's all this book is about, I think,
I mean,
really.
if we could just pause on that for a second, I think what's so striking about this book to me is how strong the character work is. You know, because again, like we both went to a liberal arts college.
Yes.
We know people like Fiona. We know people like Zoe. We know people like Danny. Like I can pinpoint people who fit into these sort of archetypes almost, right? And I think
you're such a Fiona.
I'm clearly a Danny.
That was hurtful. That was
I'm
intended to wound.
A Danny, and I will embrace it. I'm just a little high strung.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and I don't think so much about things.
You'd be excited to go to the first Uniqlo in New York City.
Exactly. The conversations and the nuances of the dynamics between them, it's just done so masterfully through these conversations, through the blocking, through the body language. And it's not, I think that's way easier said than done. And also the shifting dynamics, right? Because there's also the element of a burgeoning friendship, a burgeoning relationship. They're meeting for the first time and things are shifting, right? The power dynamics are shifting. The relational dynamics are shifting. And I think it's just done so effortlessly.
Yeah. To compare it to another book that I think is very intricate, David Mazzucchelli's Asterios Polyp. That is a book where you can feel the strain of the artist at every corner. You can feel like he was figuring it out, right? Like he was really thinking, how can I maximize this? And I think in the same way, Jillian Tamaki is doing that, but you never feel the stress of it.
Yes.
It just flows.
Because in Asterios Polyp, how a lot of that is achieved is through the art.
Yeah.
Is through these crazy shifts in like style and character design and things like that. Here it's pretty static in terms, you don't get like suddenly a panel with an exaggerated facial construction.
Yeah.
Right? They look the same throughout.
Yeah.
So actually a lot of it's in the writing.
Yeah.
Which I think is maybe a bit understated, but it's really good writing. So they go to the Met. I mean, we just get these incredible spreads of just like collages of these artifacts, which is what the Met is known for. A little tangent. The other day I was at a friend's house, someone I know through work, and they came up to me and said, Nat, you got to make the gallery like the Met. And I said, what? And they said, yeah, like steal a couple artifacts, bring in a pyramid. I was like, I don't think that's something
Nat,
I can do.
You should do that. Absolutely, you should be the person doing that.
Kind of out of my pay grade.
I don't think it's in anyone's pay grade to do that, to be stealing artifacts.
So yeah, and I think the Met comes with its own controversies.
Yeah.
Obviously they have a pyramid. Should they have a pyramid? Fiona certainly doesn't think so.
Yeah, because like that's something that they dive into pretty quickly in the politics of art.
A lot of things happen here. We also get into this idea because Zoe is a life science student, so she is sort of not as exposed to the art world and art appreciation and art literacy as maybe Fiona and Danny are.
She's feeling a little bit out of her depth.
Right, so she's looking at this fictional art piece, as we've verified, that looks like basically like a giant gumball, and she likes it, but she can't really articulate why, and she's feeling a bit insecure in her ability to articulate why. And so Zoe's like, but what am I supposed to see? You're studying this stuff, like how to look at it properly, right? And that's what, as art student myself, you get that question a lot, and as someone who works at the art museum. And then Danny is quite reassuring. She says, sure, we have to take art history, context and stuff, how knowing when someone painted something tells you what they were responding to or whatever. It's cool. Lots of reading though. But you don't need to know any of that stuff. You can just like a thing.
Which is so lovely. Such a beautiful thought for Danny to be sharing.
And it's also the truth.
It's the truth. Yeah. You can just like a thing.
Who cares what the artist is dead.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so they share this lovely moment and insight into each other's worlds and also their friendship.
But let's take a second here, right? Because I think so much of why I love these museums is because they're diving into this difficult problem of how do you make a museum visit interesting, right? That's what Jillian and Mariko Tamaki are taking head on. Because it's not just a simple thing of, let's walk through the hallways, let's see the art on the walls. No, it's how do we represent the emotional experience of going to a museum? And so one of the ways they do that is with this mosaic, like you said, this collage of different works that are there just on a blank space. But if we look back at this mushroom piece, this piece that doesn't really exist, the first time we see it, Zoe's standing in front of it, and it's about, waist high, maybe a few feet tall.
It's on a plinth that's waist high, and then the thing extends a bit.
Plinth, hear that, folks?
Hey.
Now that's what the gallery pays for. But yeah, so it's not that big, and Zoe's just kind of looking at it. And after Danny says this thing of, you can just like it, you turn the page.
And it's huge.
It's huge. It becomes 20 times its size. And the background goes white.
So big, so small.
We're no longer in a real space, but we are understanding the emotional experience of looking at a work and how that can make you feel.
And what I'm realizing now as we look through this again, this little moment is kind of like what this trip would be like if Fiona wasn't there.
Right.
It's a lovely moment between these two friends, and they're just talking about art, and you can almost imagine that if Fiona wasn't around, this whole trip would just be like this. It's so simple, so easy, so pure.
Because you haven't read the whole thing, so you won't get the sense of this. Fiona's role / what she is to them forces them to also reinvestigate their friendship where it is now.
Sure.
And if Fiona wasn't there, perhaps they could coast by and it could be pure and everything, but it also would be covering up the fact that they are no longer the people they used to be.
Yeah, and I think I'm using pure incorrectly.
Yeah.
There. I think there's a sort of superficiality to it. Sort of they're engaging on a certain
facile, maybe.
Yeah, facile. Yeah. It's just very conflict averse.
Yeah.
Kind of, friends.
We're friends, of course we're friends, so let's just have a good time.
Yeah.
Without thinking like, actually, what does it mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. What are we going through? I want to go to this moment where Zoe and Fiona are bonding, at one of the higher levels.
Just one of like a balcony of some
Yeah,
sort.
on a balcony of some sorts. And it's basically, I won't use what she says, but she basically goes, "You're gay, right?" to Zoe. And Zoe's like, "Yeah." And Fiona's like, "Cool." And we're like, okay. But at the same time, Danny's on the first floor. And the way they do this page is so beautiful because it's actually communicating the layers, like the literal heights they're at. It's paneled, so it's not a simple one-page spread and then Zoe and Fiona are at the top and Danny's at the bottom. No,
But it's their gaze, right?
it's the gaze,
Yeah.
right? And so you can... The what?
No. GAZE.
The what?
GAZZE.
Identity politics episode.
It's the gaze.
But yeah, Danny's looking up and she's so happy. And she takes a photo of them.
She's just a happy bunny with her camera.
Yeah. And so they leave the museum. It's clear that Fiona's like a little frustrated that they've been there this long. There's this funny bit. Actually, they don't really let other people into the narrative very much, the Tamakis. But there's this really funny bit when Dee is in the gift store and there's a man looking
Another
at
classic part of the museum experience.
Yes,
by the way. You always end at the gift store.
And it's this really quiet moment where she's looking at a postcard and then behind her there's a man shouting, "Lois, you want a Monet sweatshirt? Lois!" And then Lois replies, "I said I wanted a t-shirt." "Well, it's a sweatshirt. That's what they have."
Tourists.
And it's just real. That's very real and it's also very funny.
And he probably pronounced it Monet.
One hundo. If I was really into character, I'd have gotten that right.
And then we get into this is where the liberal art school kids come into the picture, right? Where they begin talking about, what did they just experience at the Met and I guess interrogating why do they feel that way. And I think Danny, represents that kind of very simple, like, it was great. I liked it. I enjoyed it. And Fiona's like, well, why did you enjoy it? And should you be enjoying it because this and that and this and that? And Fiona's right, but God, is she annoying.
I mean, there's also a little bit of a trick that the Tamakis pull here is that we don't actually see Fiona look at much of the art.
Well, she was sketching something. That's where Danny finds her, sketching in the corner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we mostly see the Met view Zoe's perspective. We do side a little bit against Fiona here because we're like, you weren't looking. But she is also right. The politics of museums and curation and galleries is really murky and worth interrogating.
Yeah. So some of the things she gets into is like, oh, nice to be in the presence of work that's validated by a $500 million price tag, blah, blah, blah. And then she says, but don't you think that by giving these works so-called gravity, you're just validating that shit? And Danny's just like, I'm not giving anything gravity. I just like it, man.
Yeah.
Which
goes back to the central ethos of Danny, right? Which is you can just like it.
Yeah.
But is she right? She is right. You can just like it.
Yeah.
But you can also be critical of it.
Two things can be true at once, right? And
yeah.
then we get into that even more later when they're talking about humanity and is humanity inherently depraved or whatever. And then it's like, we also live in the structures.
Which is a crazy conversation to be having in this book. And but it lands so perfectly.
But it's conversations we've had in school so often, right? I mean, again, we have very specific experiences. But yeah, I think that resonates with us personally as well. And then, and this is where kind of Fiona, they go on and on and on. And then they're like, she's like, look, I'm not giving you shit about the Met or whatever. I paid $20 American to see that stuff too. So I'm just being a bitch.
And she's lighting her cigarette as she does this. She looks cool as hell.
Yeah. With her little Chun-Li buns.
Yeah, but also behind the background, there's just swirling winds around her. There's the gusts of New York City. And the fight is building, and then she kind of deflates.
Not a fight. I would say it's discourse.
This discourse, but also this, I would say it's a disagreement at the very least. This tension is building, and it gets cut off by Fiona dominating half the page with lighting her cigarette, and then they agree, let's go to the Flatiron, and you turn the page, and we're totally panelless again. 2-page spread. 1 page is almost completely white.
It's kind of like blank slate. Okay, we put this disagreement aside. Let's look at this building.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, again, noticeably in this whole conversation, it's just between Danny and Fiona. That's where the tension is building. And then Zoe is kind of quiet. And the only thing Zoe says is, don't look at me. My favorite thing was a giant gumball.
And she's doing this pose where her 2 hands are up, she's surrendering preemptively.
Yeah. And I think that also points to Zoe's role in this new friend dynamic, right?
Yeah, this
She's
one
kind
that's
of-
evolving
Yeah.
really in front of our eyes.
Yeah.
Because this is not a friend group that's existed before.
Mm.
Yeah, the fact that the Tamakis are able to look again at friendship. And it's so different from This One Summer, but the themes are very similar. Because This One Summer is about two friends who've been friends for a long time who see each other every summer.
And who are growing up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is really just two old friends, and then a third person shows up.
And it's a slightly different phase of life.
And a slightly different phase of life. And there's just the storytelling is similarly easy to go through, but the themes are so complex.
Yeah.
And they're just able to dig into it in a different way.
We should just call this genre of writing like
Tamakiisms.
Tamakiisms. You know, I feel like they deserve that.
Yeah.
Because it's so consistently effective.
Yeah.
Can we coin that?
Yeah.
Tamakian.
I don't think anyone has to use it, but we can say it.
We'll use it. I think it's easier to
You'll use it. I don't think I'm with it.
This is so Tamakian. After the Flatiron page, that clean slate,
They go to a little park.
arguably one of my favorite pages in the whole,
Yeah.
in what I've read.
No, absolutely.
I mean, how do you even describe this page? So they're in a park, and then now we're starting to get a little bit of Zoe and Fiona, you know, flirty,
Yeah.
touchy.
The left-hand page is Zoe taking a photo, and then the photo Zoe's taken, which is Danny, hands up like YMCA style across the street, so excited.
Danny's distant already, right?
Danny's
Yeah.
distant already, and then Fiona says, "Let me see the photo," and this is still with a background, right? Even though it's not
A little bit.
It's basically not paneled. The only
Yeah.
panel is the literal photo. I don't even know how to unpack
Yeah,
what's going
sure,
on. It's
that's-
crazy.
But this page, let's talk about
And then the right-hand page is, it's that same thing of when Zoe and Danny meet for the first time again at the start of the book, where the space goes white.
whitewashed background.
We enter an unrealistic space, and actually they go even further this time because now Zoe and Fiona are just hands and heads.
yeah.
Their clothes have washed out, right? Even though they're not wearing the same colors, they are now just existing on this white space. And there's a sense of communion here suddenly, right? By not showing the clothes, by not showing their bodies, right? They are existing within the same space. And we're getting a really clear sense of, oh, these two are connecting in maybe a profound way.
Right. And you would think intuitively that if I wanted to show intimacy,
Yeah.
I would include the bodies. I would show a shoulder touching, you know, or a leaning. But somehow by removing the bodies and just having the heads, floating heads and hands, it kind of brings it to this abstract level of intimacy that points to something that is more profound. But they're saying nothing, right?
No, they're just laughing at
It's
how
just
bad a photo's
Fiona
always
going,
taken.
"Wow, you're an awful photographer. Wow, thanks. Can I take them? Be my guest." That's it. The most trivial conversation.
And just,
Tamakis!
Jillian Tamaki's mastery of body language is ridiculous because you look at this, there's no bodies, there's just hands.
So it's not even body language, it's hand language.
It's hand language, and that's enough. We get it.
You know
We
how
get
hard-
everything.
You know how hard
Oh,
hands are to draw?
this is insane. I'm going ballistic over here.
You know what? And you only see one of Fiona's hands. 3 hands.
And we're not even done with the hands. Go to the next page. Okay, the one after that.
Oh
my
hands.
God. Okay, we gotta calm down. I'm getting too fiery.
This is the opposite energy that.
No, this is absolutely not the energy of roaming. This is Yen and Nat bringing some wackiness to the table.
But yeah, so and then we get to this moment. We've just been lingering on Zoe and Fiona, and then it's just this 6-panel page. Very neat squares on this orange-yellow background.
Big margins.
And I'm going to describe each one. So first one is Fiona touching the back of Zoe's head, kind of affectionately.
And then it's Zoe standing and looking back at Fiona with a little bit of like an action line, like to indicate that she's turned her head.
Oh, you touched me.
Oh, what's going on? And they're near each other.
And then the last 4 panels are just zoom in on their hands. And then you have Zoe's hand just lingering and Fiona's hand clearly, you know, reaching and kind of tickling the palm maybe.
A little bit of there's a little bit of interlocking, but there's nothing.
We should reenact it.
No, absolutely.
Oh,
not.
sorry.
This is not audio.
I
show.
wanted to give, but now we have video. I wanted to give
No, no,
Gonna give
Nat.
them what they want.
No, there's a little bit of like interclasping fingers, but it's all. I think what is so beautiful about this moment is how tentative it is. There is no firm like we are now holding hands.
It's a little tickle.
It's a little testing the waters. Like, hey, how do you feel about this? And then the penultimate panel is Fiona just locking with her index onto Zoe's pinky.
The final one is as Fiona pulls away, you see Zoe's pinky lingering.
Yeah.
And that's so minute. It's so microscopic, but Ow!
It's unbelievable.
How did I get all that from these pictures?
It's just, I think you can feel this moment. You know, you talk about how like writing is sometimes trying to evoke the five senses. Evoking touch is very difficult, but they do it so well here, where you can feel that moment. And you've had that moment. Wordless. Incredible. This, I think, is maybe one of my favorite pages of the whole book, because it just stops you in your tracks. And you sit on this really micro moment, right? Again, the micro moment, and you just, oh, okay, something has turned.
Not to, just keep going on and on about the same thing, but apart from the two action lines when Zoe turns, there's no action lines here.
No.
But it's so, somehow the movement is communicated just through the pose. The static pose tells you who's initiating, who's reciprocating.
Yeah. Let's go to the Natural History Museum before I literally pop a blood vein. Just like thinking of this page.
So we get to the Natural History Museum. And if you thought the Met was kind of visual overload, the Natural History Museum is next level. I mean, because here we get the animals.
Yeah. Here's when, we were talking about that parallel levels of scale comes in. But I think what makes the Natural History Museum section of this book so fantastic is that those levels of scale actually collide here for the first time. The big and small are meeting in a major, major way in the page construction, in the emotional moments of it.
So in this section, we kind of get more of the sense that, Zoe and Fiona are already kind of pairing up and doing your own thing, leaving Danny on her own.
Yeah.
Poor Danny. Poor Nat.
Nat?
Because I'm like Danny.
No, but in this sense, I'm like Danny.
What do you mean?
I'm always the third wheel.
Aww.
You have a wife. And I hang out with you too.
But we never do this to you.
True.
Come on.
If anything, you're like the Danny in those situations.
You and Janine.
Me and Janine are like, yeah, this guy sucks.
Okay, as long as you aren't kissing my wife in some corner of the museum.
Why would you bring that to the table?
You are the one that positioned it that way. Anyway. I'm definitely making some assumptions here, but I just kind of feel part of this was like Jillian going, I want to draw some animals.
Oh, actually, that.
Do you have a quote on this?
I do.
Am I right in my assumptions?
Not about the animals in particular, but a wonderful, wonderful quote from Jillian Tamaki that I was like, wow, comic book artists are the coolest people in the world. Which was when asked about like why this setting, why 2009.
Yeah.
Quote, that's sometimes how you choose to work. You think, this is the world I want to live in for the next few months or years. How do I write a story to fit that world? End quote.
Love that.
Isn't that so cool that you're like, oh yeah. And think about, again, it written during a lockdown.
Yeah.
Right? Like, oh, actually, I already know the next few years I'm going to have to be committed to the visual world of this place. I'm going to pick a place that I want to go to. The entire book is accurate to 2009 New York. Like the architecture, the buildings in the background. Because New York is maybe one of the most archived cities in the world.
Right.
There's so many photographs. There's so many Google photos of it. There's, Google Maps, everything of it. And Jillian Tamaki is like, yeah, I really want to make sure this is 2009 New York. Even the way they spend their days, when Mariko and Jillian Tamaki were plotting it out, they were like, okay, these actually have to be some things. The series of things they do in this day have to be things that a New York tourist could do in a day.
Right.
We cannot have them go to the Statue of Liberty and then go to Times Square and then see a show and then go to the museum. These have to be things that they can actually do. And that doesn't really feel like something that matters to me, but I think it has a lot of bearing on the quality of the book, where that just affects the reality of it.
But yeah, I think it does have a bearing on how real
whether you know that or not.
Yeah. Because they don't gloss over the fact that they take a train from New Jersey to New York. Like, this is very specific, right?
Yeah.
Like it's they could have just flown to JFK. But there's a specificity to the realness of taking that train, of being in the hostel, of eating the pizza, getting coffee before going to the museum. That's a very quintessential New York experience.
There's a lot of bits that we skipped over where they're like in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
And Danny's like looking at a giant map. And Fiona's like, stop being such a tourist. Stop being such a tourist. It just makes it all feel real. And then they talk very concretely, okay, we're supposed to go 3 blocks this way.
Justice for Danny! Justice for Danny. Okay, so then we're at the Natural History Museum, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're just incredible animals. Look at this 2-page spread of this gazelle, I think.
I think that's a gazelle. Maybe
some sort of...
okapi antelope.
Maybe. I don't know. We're no natural historians. This is the wrong word, but it's so unnecessary. like
It's so frivolous.
no. But what I mean is like it's
Extraneous.
It's so unexpected.
Yes,
right.
yeah,
Like a 2-page spread with a close up of an antelope / gazelle / Okapi's face.
Yeah.
And then just the speech bubble going out of the page, someone saying, the beauty that is the African savannah. But that is the experience. If you've ever been to the Natural History Museum, it's you basically experience you looking at something up close and people talking behind you.
You cannot experience anything at the Natural History Museum or most museums alone. You are experiencing yourself experiencing it, and you're experiencing a ton of other people experiencing it with you. And the hope is that the people you're experiencing it with you are your friends.
Right.
But that is not the experience Danny is having.
Strangers.
She is experiencing it with strangers while her 2 friends have disappeared.
Yeah.
And I think this moment, I know you're not saying it's unnecessary, right? But what it is...
Unexpected.
Unexpected.
Yeah.
But the function of this page, on top of being like kind of a tonal reset, here's a pacing reset, so many things. It's also a Danny's by herself, and we're getting to the emotional experience of what that feels like.
And the next page is literally just comments from strangers, right?
Yeah.
Someone going, yes. Someone going, can we go inside the glass? Someone going, the craftsmanship is magnificent. The sets are reminiscent of classic film. And these are all people that Danny does not know. And where is she in these pages? We don't even see her. This is maybe her POV almost, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thinking about this also, it's like, it's pretty much a replication of Zoe in the airport. Hearing random strangers.
Yeah.
By herself.
How the turns of tables.
Yep.
And then we get to
Woo-wee.
Zoe and Fiona sitting on a bench. Fiona sketching. Zoe's looking. Zoe touches Fiona's hair, pulls it behind her ear. Classic move.
And you can see Fiona's got a little smile.
It's a little flirty, touchy. And then they begin talking, right? They talk and what's really interesting in both these pages is that you have these panels that are kind of like on the, I guess, around the page.
I would say the panels are an overlay on top of an underlay.
Right. And the underlay is these close-ups of animals.
Yes.
Which feels, I guess, on first glance, it's like, why?
It's a little strange. It's you may think it creates distance, but actually I think it creates intimacy almost. Because I think it's almost like from their POV, right? The way they can't look at each other right now is the thing they're looking at instead.
Right. Perhaps also our POV. You know, in this kind of like intimate moment, you kind of feel a bit voyeuristic looking at them. So like, you know, if you were if it's this idea of many people in a museum, right? If I was in a museum overhearing this conversation, I see, one person tuck the hair of the other behind their ear and they're kind of giggling and smiling. And I was like standing there looking at this antelope. I wouldn't want to look away from the antelope.
I would be like, okay, could you guys get a room or go to the butterfly vivarium? One of 2 options.
Which, maybe they do.
Could you just read Fiona's dialogue there?
Sure. So then after all this looking away, kind of like evading each other's glances, and then Fiona finally looks Zoe right in the eyes and says, I dare you to kiss me.
And then we've got a giant silent panel with a huge elephant looming over them. And then Fiona breaks the silence.
Oh my God. What a silly suggestion by me.
and
they hadn't kissed yet, right? Up to this point?
No, they have.
Oh, they've already kissed?
They have. You just didn't see it.
So this is not first kiss.
This is not the first kiss. Yeah. But this is the first public kiss.
Sure.
Right? And their first kiss was when they were both inebriated as well. So now they're fully sober. So this is a different temperature to this. And you think, okay, let's stick with this moment. Oh my gosh.
And then you're like,
is Zoe gonna do it?
What's the page turn gonna be? We're back to Lonely Danny.
Our sad favorite. We stand Danny.
She looks so sad. And it's her, it's a little close up of her overlaid against this. It's kind of like collage almost as well.
Again, yeah, it is collage.
Right?
Again,
and maybe you get a sense of she's not really present in the space, right? She's kind of floating as well.
It's again an underlay overlay situation. But the panels are a little more cluttered. So actually, if you look at this image here on the right-hand side of Danny in the museum with the elephants, presumably different elephants than Zoe and Fiona.
Oh, for sure.
It exists on top of a larger bird's eye view of a kid's tour through the Natural History
Actually,
Museum.
maybe it's the same elephant.
It could be the same elephant.
Because why would there be different elephants? And it's kind of giving...
Same elephant?
No.
It's giving same elephant. That classic phrase.
The benches are different. Different elephant. And then, again, like this sense of, because she's got no one to talk to, she's got no one to converse with, she is just hearing the conversations of everyone else around her. And I guess that's contributing to her sense of loneliness, kind of drowning in the ambient conversations. And then you turn the page again, and
I love this page.
You still don't get the kiss.
No. We're still with Danny.
We're still lingering on Danny. We're building. You're kind of, Tamakis have us in the palm of their hand.
No, we're really,
Hands.
at every page turn, you're hoping, come on, let us see it. Bring us back to the tension.
Speak
the
for
tension
yourself.
The tension is building. We want to know if it's going to happen.
Sure.
And I think that actually makes Danny's loneliness more potent.
Yeah.
Because we're almost like, let's go see something else.
Yeah. Oh.
Which is so sad.
That's sad.
But I love this page. I love this 2-page spread.
You know that at the same time as she's experiencing this loneliness, her two buddies are experiencing profound connection.
Yeah.
And that's just...
They're
smacking lips.
They're clashing teeth.
Yee. Lashing tongues. This is bad.
Yeah, this is bad.
So this beautiful page, if you've been to the Met, this classic kind of like oversized animals hanging from the ceiling.
This is the aquatic section
giant
specifically.
fish, giant jellyfish. Well, also
swordfish,
you get flowers, flora, fauna.
I love this page. I really do think this spread is like worth the price of entry to this book.
Turn the page again. Still Danny, but with a giant blue whale.
Turn the page now.
Oh!
And we are in the butterfly vivarium.
They stick the landing.
They do stick the landing.
Stick the landing.
The Tamakis, absolutely. They kill the landing.
They've landed and then there's a crater. That's how stuck it is. What we have is a 2-page spread and we have Fiona and Zoe making out, smacking lips, clashing teeth, lashing tongues. But they've moved, right? So they moved to as we've suggested to them, to the butterfly vivarium.
Yes. But the layout of the page is so exquisite.
Yeah,
it's so abstract and out of this world because the butterflies are huge.
They're huge.
The butterflies are bigger than them.
Yeah. And it's sort of, they create this frame around them. So it kind of looks like literally a picture perfect moment.
Yeah.
It's like we're looking at a photograph within a picture frame.
No, yeah, actually, that's such a great point, Nat. The wingspan of the butterfly specifically creates a lens for us to look at these two.
Yeah.
And so it's very romantic. It's very beautiful.
You can almost imagine like in a film, like you kind of have this web of butterflies and then they part to reveal this couple kissing and something about butterflies as well. Butterflies in your stomach, when you feel in love and infatuation and all those things.
Using the same vocabulary of the museum of the Met when Zoe's looking at the gumball, right? Where now the thing that was once this size is now actually huge because the emotional scale of it has escalated so much.
And then more.
And it keeps going, and now we're really close in on them. We can see the clashing teeth.
No teeth, but tongue.
We can see the lashing tongues.
Yeah, for sure.
But the butterflies are even bigger and they're really like flying around them. It's just such what is this page?
It really just captures this sense of
the world falls out from beneath
you.
Nothing else matters.
Nothing matters. You're in this moment and it's just in your own world. And honestly, get a room. Like if I was in a museum looking at this, I'd be like, youngsters.
I think, if I was in the vivarium and I saw this, I'd be like, I get it. I don't want to see it though.
And maybe now if we saw it, we'll be like,
roaming.
Tamakian.
How Tamakian of them.
Tamakian of this couple.
And we've talked about how actually in prior moments, the world washing away, the vocabulary Jillian Tamaki's uses to go white.
Yes,
it's to go
thank
blank.
You for bringing that back.
But this time, it's a full spread of the butterflies.
Yeah.
That's why it's so different from those moments. They are not on a blank canvas.
It's a maximalist.
Yeah.
As maximalist as Jillian Tamaki gets.
Yeah.
It's not Mendoza's Skip.
No.
But in its own way, it has this chaos to it that works so well. And then we zoom out and it's almost La La Land-esque when Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone are kind of floating in that, what's that called? That space, that star.
The planetarium.
The planetarium, right? It's Fiona and Zoe literally floating through this butterfly vivarium. They're flying. They're on cloud 9.
This is exactly the moment when I was rereading Roaming, trying to figure out what we were going to read. I was like, I need us to get to this moment where Jillian Tamaki breaks all the rules of what we think we know about this book. About
all the realism is broken.
All the realism is really tossed out the window. And everything just kind of, for me, builds to this and continues after this. But it's just such a profound, beautiful moment that is tied to the characters, but also such a conceptually strong and robust way to tell this story. It's just amazing. It's so emotionally potent.
It's happiness.
Yeah, it's happiness.
But also, again, maybe projecting, but it kind of feels like more like infatuation than love.
Yeah, I know. It's a little fleeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the butterflies contribute to that.
Yeah.
Butterflies
Temporality.
are fleeting.
Yeah.
It's fluttery. It's, where's the substance in this almost, right?
I mean, you think about butterflies in the stomach. That doesn't last forever. There is this sense of the burgeoning love.
Yeah.
Or attraction.
Yeah.
Right. That may not necessarily be stable footing, especially when it's currently basically predicated on a third person not being there. And so speaking of that third person,
you turn the page. Danny is lying under the whale. It's honestly, like, objectively speaking, it's such a strange panel.
It's a bizarre panel.
You know, it's not even centralized, this whale. It's basically the POV of Danny looking up at the belly of the whale.
The underbelly of the whale.
But you immediately get this contrast between the butterflies and the magic to just like, duh.
Above the whale, you can see the grids of the Natural History Museum's windows.
And you just imagine Danny just lying there for God knows how long.
Yeah.
She's probably just like wallowing in her loneliness.
She's feeling pretty miserable. Yeah. And then we get different angles of the whale, different POVs of the whale.
Did you notice this?
A butterfly across the gutters.
A little stray butterfly that would definitely not be in this part of the museum, but as, you know, because it's Danny's POV and then we hear Fiona and Zoe approaching and you hear their voices calling, Danny!
Yeah.
And then Danny says, where did you guys go? There's a little stray butterfly. Jillian and Tamaki did not have to put that there.
No, did not. Certainly did not have to do with that to us. I don't even need to ask you, would you keep reading?
Oh, 100%.
Right? I mean, because it's already, you can tell it's a classic. You can feel it's a classic. Just a terrific book. Terrific book.
What a great title as
well.
The
thing is, Nat, the thing you don't even know, I mean, I'm really excited for you to read the rest of it. There's like a section after this butterfly section, which I think to me is the book.
Ooh. Okay, don't spoil it.
I'm not going to spoil it.
I'm not going to
spoil it. But yeah, no, Roaming is a great title. It's operating on multiple levels.
Yeah. They're traveling.
There's also something you don't know, which is that Zoe's on a roaming data plan.
Oh.
And that actually becomes a barrier because she and Dee eventually split up and she can't reach her because her roaming stops working.
Genius. But also feelings. Feelings roam.
Yes.
Relationships roam.
Yes.
This idea of a constant shifting.
I actually have a quote from Jillian Tamaki on the title. Sarah Nielsen asks, why is it called Roaming to You? And in a part of a larger answer, Jillian Tamaki says this, quote, you have to be able to give yourself time to innovate and experiment if you want to grow as an artist. So, I really do think that grasping and roaming without a destination in mind is so beneficial to us. And it's being lost a little bit. End quote. And that's in reference to how the Tamakis maybe started slightly later in their lives as a collaborative pair. And they both just needed to wander around, figure things out like these characters are, and not expect to have their voice fully formed in their 20s. They needed to explore, they needed to experiment, they needed to find other things, they needed to roam.
And work on their craft.
Get the reps in, and now their voices, that's why they feel so fully formed.
They feel so mature in their craft. It's not without years and years and years. I mean, you can tell, like, I mean, I'm sure they're very talented, but this is honed through
deeply
years
inspirational. Deeply inspirational. So let's do the pipeline. What would you say to someone?
Pipeline is what I say to them. Come on, everyone. It's pipeline time.
No matter what someone says to you, that's what you're going to say.
Yeah.
If you liked X, you would like Roaming.
This one, Summer, is a cop-out, so I'm not going to say that.
Yeah, you can't say it. Sorry.
I can't, but you know,
sorry.
It's so Tamakian.
Yeah, true.
I'm going to end season 3 here with a crazy suggestion that probably will make zero sense to anyone, but it makes sense in my mind. I was just thinking about, as I was reading this book, what would be the soundtrack I hear in my head.
Okay.
And I was taken back. And I think part of it is a huge tinge of nostalgia for me. It's a band I listened to a lot as a kid, and maybe to some extent even now. There's a band called Reliant K, and they have an album called Forget and Not Slow Down. And there's just something about that album that I feel resonates with this work a lot, just in terms of, I can't even articulate it, just like the nostalgia, the sense of something burgeoning, the sense of the emotions you feel at that age. It's complex, but also like you're still figuring it out. And I think that album captures that vibe very well. That's all I'll say. And you can listen to it yourself and tell me if you think I'm wrong.
Okay. That's a good job, Nat. I think that's kind of a wild card. And that actually spurs me to jettison my answer, which was going to be Greta Gerwig's Little Women.
Okay.
Which is also about growing up, even though that one's more sisterhood than friendship, but still sisters have to choose to be friends actively. I think that's a part of what that movie's about. I think I would go with like Phoebe Bridgers. I would go with Punisher. Yeah, I think there's a similar sense of melancholy / tenderness.
And also like some lesbian rock vibes.
Yeah. Like I think there's like an emotional resonance between those two works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at us doing a little
we're changing things
out of
up.
left field recommendation. So if you like those two artists, check out this book maybe. And if you read the book, what would they like next?
I'm actually going to go with what I was just reading, which was Allison by Lizzie Stewart. I do think, and I think that book is also very strongly about friendship. It's also about growing up. It's about specifically friendship between two women, even though that comes a little later into the story. I think there is a similar sense of, and that one has a much grander scale. It's across a life. It's across, I think, the 60 years of this woman's life, and this is across 3 days. But I do think there's an interesting pairing between those two. That's what I would recommend. I'd recommend Allison by Lizzie Stewart. And so that brings us to the end of season 3, Nat.
Woohoo! I mean, that's not a shout of jubilation.
You're now free
from the shackles.
The producers and I were looking back at the season and trying to think, how can we recap it? And we joked about this at like episode 3.
Okay.
But this whole season really has been about love. Let me walk you through it. Right?
Okay.
Flintstones, we had the reflections on marriage.
Yeah.
Also the platonic love between vacuum cleaner and bowling ball.
Mm-hmm.
These Savage Shores is about love in the face of evil colonialism vampires.
Yeah.
Blue Box is about young love.
Yeah.
Nice House is about how do we love and live at the end of the world.
Bit of a stretch, but
Stretch.
okay.
Parker is a loveless life. The absence thereof.
Love.
Yeah.
Sure.
Skip is platonic love between Gloopy and Bloom.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the biggest stretch. This is the biggest stretch. Uzumaki.
No.
Love of Spiral.
Shut up. No.
You can think that first chapter of Uzumaki is actually about how a man loves spirals.
I'm not giving you that.
No, but then now we have roaming, which is about love. Yeah, absolutely about love.
Love makes the world go round. Whether it's a love of spirals or a love of each other.
Thank you. The thing I was thinking about is actually so bizarre because season 1 we were just sort of fumbling around seeing what I could show you. That was very much about technique. And I think season 2 we got very much into the business end of things. We were thinking about like what does it mean to make a comic? What does it mean for an artist to make a comic at all? Right? How do they do that? And then season 3 is about love. So I'm curious about what we're going to be doing next because all of this comes up to me in hindsight. You know, like season 2 was not at all like, let's think about what it means to make a comic. No, it just, by the time we got to the end of it, you know, when you're reading Daredevil again, we were like, oh yeah, what does this mean? What does it mean to be situated within this context, to craft a story? I just have one last little game for us, Nat.
Game?
Tiny little game. Can you tag yourself as 3 of the characters that we've read?
Tag myself.
Tag yourself as 3.
First one instantly came to mind, Fred Flintstone. That's my guy.
Yeah, you're dressed like him right now.
Thank you. Thank you for acknowledging my wonderful shirt. Married guy.
Yeah, true.
Feels a lot of pressure to support my family. Mm-hmm. That's me.
Okay.
You know, and his quote about marriage has stuck with me to this day.
Yeah, it's a terrific quote. Yeah.
So check out that episode if you haven't already. So Fred Flintstone's my first tag. Second tag, Gloopy.
I was like, if you took too long, I was just going to say Gloopy.
I think goes without saying. Great. Gloopy is...
The mushroom.
The mushroom. Yes, yeah. So undiagnosed ADHD.
Well, we don't know if Gloopy's is undiagnosed. We know it's yours is.
You think Gloopy's seeing a doctor? And then I'll go with Danny.
Yeah, I think that's a good 3. Yeah,
that's me in a nutshell. But I'm here looking at the blue whale. And thankfully, you're by my side.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice.
Love, friendship.
Yeah, we did it.
We did it, folks.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to Comic Sans. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, if you stuck around this long, if you've been around since season 1, firstly, why? Secondly, how? Thirdly, who? Fourthly, thank you.
No, and that speaks more to how we were really discovering this show in season 1. We were still figuring it out. We're still figuring it out now. But
we were roaming. We
were roaming. And we were roaming in public.
Grasping and roaming.
Thank you very much for listening to Comic Sans. You know, give us reviews, recommend us to your friends. If you read the comics we read on the show, let us know.
It really warms our hearts to know that, you know, someone has listened to something and wants to go and read, you know, and we're going to keep making this anyway, you know, regardless of what people say. But it does help. It does give us a little pep in our step, a little boost in our juice.
That's just a brand.
Is that what people say?
No, that's just a brand to boost juice. A little uni to our clo. Thanks for listening to Comic Sans, folks. We'll see you on the next page.
See ya. Thanks for listening to Comic Sans. This is an Andas Productions podcast hosted by Myle and Nathaniel Ma and produced by Scott Lee Chua and Roshan Singh Sambhi. This episode was audio edited by Maddy Searle, video edited by Kit Ling Leong, and transcribed by Danielle Anne Espinosa. Our cover art and motion graphic animations are by Kanikni Studio, Maryana Rudakova. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to rate and review Comic Sans. And while you're at it, follow us on social media at Comic Sans Pod. Links are in the description below.